Hey everyone, today I'm going to walk you through hiring a first account executive. Now, this is a search that I did about a year ago with a client, and I'm going to walk you through what happened day by day, week by week, as we started the search and as we got through to the search being completed. So, jumping right in, right? There are four pieces I want to just cover here, and then we can get into the day by day, kind of week by week, what happened piece. So, the first thing, we had a kickoff call, right? This starts every single search. The kickoff call is where we talk about what sort of person are we looking for? What kind of background do we want to see? What kind of experience? All those kind of questions. We talk about why people would be excited to join this specific company. And we talk about the logistics of the search, who's involved in the interviews, what they want to see, just a lot of those kind of like nuts and bolts, right? So that's the first meeting. The second meeting is the candidate calibration meeting. I think this is really important. I think a lot of people skip it. I think skipping it is a massive mistake. The candidate calibration meeting is where you come in with about 15 to 20 profiles and the client, and you look with the client through these profiles and you say, hey, what do you think about these people, right? Based on what we talked about in the kickoff call, this is what I've found. This is the real life data. Are they matching up, right? And ideally, like, not everyone should be a match here, but if no one's a match, then you've got bigger problems as well. So as soon as the candidate calibration call is complete, the search is now what I call in market, right? We're starting to go out, we're starting to talk to candidates, we're starting to set up interviews and the like. And then the fourth phase is these client interviews, right? This is where the rubber really meets the road. And obviously this is, the only way you can get people hired. So let's jump in. Step one, we had the contract signed. As I said, this was a new client. So we hadn't worked together before. January 30th, contract signed. A couple of days later, we have the kickoff call. So again, we're making pretty good progress here. And a week later, we've got this calibration call. Now, 1 week after that, we've got the first check-in call. I'm going to just show you what my document looks like for a check-in call. So this is my template. There are a few things that I want to just call out here. So days in market. This is essentially a clock that starts as soon as the candidate calibration call has been complete. Right? We have candidates in search and we have the engagement rate. Now I'm going to walk you through how this is kind of thought of and how this is calculated. So candidates are identified and messaged, right? We're not running job ads here. And candidates are going to come back with one of two responses. Either they're not going to respond or they're going to respond. But regardless, they're counted as in search because we've reached out to them, right? We want to know what our success rate is. Now, with these replies, they're going to have one of two types of replies. They're either not interested or interested. But regardless of what they reply, that's our engagement rate. We just need to know how our performance is going. And every single candidate that replies gets put into this sheet here, right? So that's where we get these numbers. The client can see everything, and that's kind of how we get started. So if we look 8 days in, 43 candidates are in search, 43 candidates have been messaged. There is a 7% engagement rate, and 3 candidates are now considered qualifying. So what does qualifying mean? It means if the first screen is after the weekly check-in call, then the candidate gets put into qualifying, right? So imagine we've got a check-in call on Wednesday, but I've got this candidate qualification call on Thursday. Then that candidate, they get put into qualifying, which sits here, right? And the reason that we want to talk about this with clients is, hey, here's what your pipeline looks like in terms of who you're interviewing, who you're talking to. But here's what my pipeline looks like. This is what your pipeline is going to look like in a few weeks. That's kind of how I think about it. It's just kind of like the advanced warning. If there's no one in my pipeline and we're at the start of the search or we're partway through a search, it's probably not a good sign. Whereas at the end of the search, not so much of an issue, right? So let's get back to this and have a look at where we're at in week 2. So we get to week 2. It's now February 22nd. We've been in market for 14 days. Our engagement rate has jumped up. We've now got 111 candidates in search. So we've been doing a big push, right? These are all very specific profiles. We're not going randomly out here, but we've now got 9 candidates qualifying. 1 candidate has been disqualified. I'm going to walk you through kind of like the decision tree here. So if a candidate passes the first phone screen on my end, then they're going to be presented to the client and they'll be marked as presented in this weekly check-in call. If they don't pass the first call, that class is disqualified. Now, as soon as they go from presented and that interview is scheduled, they're then categorized as interviewing, and they're going to be categorized as interviewing throughout the rest of the process. If at any point the client disqualifies them, then they're going to be put into disqualified. But generally speaking, right, we just want to be able to look at this kind of like snapshot and say, hey, what's our situation right now? It should take us about 30 seconds to work out who's where, right? And so one of the things as well with disqualified candidates is they're only here for 1 week at a time. We don't need to know that we disqualified someone 3 weeks ago. They're not relevant to the search anymore. So let's get to week 3, right? We have a lot of candidates in qualifying here. We're now 21 days in market. Our engagement rate continues to go up. So 111 candidates in search. We've had about 18 or so responses. Now, the client hasn't seen anyone yet, and that all changes here. So the client is presented with 4 candidates. And the reason that there were so many candidates qualifying in this earlier week was that we wanted to build essentially a bank so that they could have an interview panel, right? And I'm a really big proponent of interview panels, especially when you start a search, because you want to really be able to see candidates objectively, right? So by having, hey, we're going to talk to this person at 10, you're going to talk to this person at 11, this person at 1, and this person at 2, you're able to think about the candidates in relation to one another rather than say, oh, I talked to Jack on Tuesday and now it's Friday, and I talked to that other guy a week and a half ago. What was his name again, right? You get way too scattered. So we want to have a really condensed interview process, at least on that first interview. So the client is now presented with 4 candidates. We've still got a nice big pipeline, right? We've still got 5 candidates who are qualifying and 3 candidates have been disqualified. So not everyone made it to the interview stage. Now we get to week 4. We're 28 days in the market. The engagement rate continues to climb up. We've now got 141 candidates in search. So, we're continuing to push. We're continuing to reach out. The client is interviewing 3 candidates at this point. So one person didn't make it through. They're actually presented with another candidate this week. We've still got 3 candidates qualifying, right? So this is kind of like the middle phase of the search. And you'll see this crossover for the next week as well. Week number 5, 35 days in market. We're now at 188 candidates in search. We've got an engagement rate of 20%. So we've heard back from 37 people. The client is now interviewing 5 candidates. So, there was 3 plus 1. And then sometime in the last week, we added in another one. And now that presented with another 2. So they've got 7 candidates total. We've still got 3 candidates that were qualifying, and another candidate has been kind of disqualified out of the pipeline. Now, week 6, this is really, at this point in the search, we've really started to narrow things down. So we're 42 days in search. We've got 188 candidates in the search. Our engagement rate, it's now 24%. The client has actually gone through and cut a whole lot of people. So we have 3 candidates in play, and we have 4 candidates disqualified. Now we're starting to get to like third interviews, final interviews. So there's no reason for us to reach out to additional candidates at this point of view because we think an offer is very close by. Final week, week 7. This is for March 29th, 49 days in market. To be honest, I don't actually think this call happened. And the reason I don't think this call happened is that we had reference calls go out on March 27th. And we had a candidate start on April 3rd. That doesn't mean that we weren't in touch. I spoke with this client almost every single day over the last 2 weeks of this search, just with the balance of the search kind of like moving from, hey, we need to initially qualify candidates to, hey, how can we bring this person onto the team? So, in a couple minutes, that's what this timeline looked like. Pretty good outcome in terms of time here, 49 days in market, happy client, and a pretty successful outcome all round. Now, if you'd like something similar, if you'd like to talk about what it looks like to work with Next Venture, I've got a link in the description below. I've also got a link to my website where you can learn a little bit more. But either way, hope you click one of them, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye.